Coming up on the Enough Already podcast, is the Never Trumps solution to their Donald problem a takeover of the Libertarian Party? We will discuss that and Macro Lubio's future. Ashe Schow of the Washington Examiner will join us for her segment, Kicking Ashe. Ashe joins Sarah Smith of Howe Creative for the Sewing Circle. They'll answer the question, is it sexist to tell a woman to smile? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Kerry Picket of the Daily Caller will fill us in on what could happen at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. And Fox News contributor Pat Caddell has some interesting things to say about Donald Trump, Hillary, Barack Obama, and Bob Woodward. All this and more on the Enough Already podcast.
No, the only stories that I really wanted to talk about, Fingers, from this past week are this. Did you read the piece from Dominich about the Libertarian Party?
No, I didn't.
Well, basically, I can just read it to you real fast. It's not a very long thing, but
Okay.
it really pissed me off. So the title is, If Never Trump Wants to Matter, Look to the Libertarians. So whoever the Trump, this is the subtitle, whoever the Never Trump folks settle on, they'd be wiser to choose someone with the ability to win a few key states, which was the Seton-Motley kind of idea, not just make a generalized protest vote case against Clintonism and Trumpism. All right, here we go. So there's a clear movement underway to challenge Donald Trump via a third-party vehicle, a movement featuring a group of Never Trump figures, including radio host Eric Erickson, lobbyist Bill Weichterman, and businessman Bob Fisher. They are agitating for a third-party candidate who could potentially appeal to the host of Americans who seem to be with them in opposing Trump to the last, even as a nominee. Exit polls from Tuesday suggest plenty of appetite for a third-party alternative to Donald Trump, with 37% of the Republican electorate in Ohio or Florida saying they would consider a third party given a Trump-Hillary nomination pair. That's a far more significant number than we've seen under prior candidacies, and it's certainly possible that a portion of that will actually bolt. If just a third of the Republican primary voters who say they would vote third party over Trump end up sticking to their word, that's 12 or 13%. Enough to swing the election to Hillary Clinton, absent a major uptick in independent voters to offset the loss. Of course, as independent candidacies go, the Libertarian Party is a far more appealing vehicle than mounting a bid unattached to any party, as Philip Bump notes. When Michael Bloomberg was still considering a third-party bid, MSNBC's Benji Sarlin looked at what it would take to get on the ballot. In Texas, for example, an independent candidate would need tens of thousands of signatures by May 9th in order to get on the ballot. A more likely scenario would be finding a candidate who could run on a party line that's already likely to qualify for the ballot in enough states to make a difference. Sarlin points out the Libertarian Party will likely hit that mark, meaning that conservatives could find themselves in the unusual position of encouraging Republicans to avoid the Republican candidate for president and vote for the Libertarian at least this once, if they find a candidate, and if everything else falls into line. So back to Dominich. Here you have to make a real decision about what you want to achieve with a third-party candidacy. Is it merely an expression of rage trying to against the dying of the light, an opportunity to throw your vote away on a true believer or someone who can give voice to the case for free markets, free hearts, and free foreheads, whatever the fuck that means? Or is it the intention to actually undo the nominations by both parties by sending the nomination to the House of Representatives? If it's the former, any potential candidate would do. Anyone with enough name ID and charisma can get 5% in the polls and make it onto the debate stage. The likely result of any significantly backed third-party candidacy would be to throw the election to Hillary Clinton. In 2012, Barack Obama got 65 million votes, Mitt Romney got 60 million votes, and Gary Johnson, the only other candidate to break a million, got 1.3. There's significant potential, given the strong opposition of both frontrunners, that a third-party bid this year could accrue a much larger degree of support, say 3 to 5 million voters. So this is when he fucking pisses me off. The smart thing for both the Never Trump folks and for the Libertarian Party, assuming that neither faction would ever come around to supporting Trump as the nominee, would be to nominate someone with regional political appeal and a capacity to win a handful of key states. enough to prevent either Clinton or Trump from achieving an electoral college majority. At that stage, the House votes based on state delegation for any of the top 3 vote getters. At that stage, the House votes based on the state delegation for any of the top 3 vote getters. That's how you got John Quincy Adams. So this is the fuck you shit. The Libertarians have their convention at the end of May, and the current likely candidate is Gary Johnson, the former New Mexico governor, climber, and generally nice oddball. But he's pro-choice and has never shown appeal beyond the normal libertarian ranks. So if the Trump people want to protest vote, their best path is a libertarian takeover, with someone who is libertarian-ish on some issues, pot, prostitution, marriage, and yet pro-life and pro-religion enough to win over the votes of the holdouts to the Trump machine. Church-going evangelicals, avowed social and fiscal conservatives, and those who just find his presence on the national scene to be a vulgar and demeaning one. It's honestly, how fucked up is that?
Okay, look. You're much more in tune with how libertarians think than I am. Let me say this. All we've heard from our friends inside the Beltway is how pissed off they are that Trump is taking over the Republican Party. Trump is taking over the Trump voter. They're hijacking the Republican Party, and they look at these people with disdain. If a bunch of conservative Republicans, social conservatives, tried to take over the Libertarian Party, wouldn't libertarians look at these conservatives the way that conservative Republicans look at Trump people?
Absolutely. I mean, the irony is completely lost on him. And it shows you like how shallow of a knowledge he has about Gary Johnson. Like, no, it's like he didn't even spend a minute researching him. Oh, he's pro-life.
Here's the other thing, too. I've seen debates, and we saw a debate at Freedom Fest. It's not a foregone conclusion that the libertarian movement is pro-choice. There are a lot of pro-life libertarians.
Right, and Johnson's position is I think it's pretty reasonable. He's pro-choice until viability, which you can argue about when that starts. But
right.
Still, then you don't have the nonsense and the freak out, and people need to be realistic about this and say Roe v. Wade is not being overturned. It should be decided on a state-by-state basis. And I heard this argument, I think, made by either Tom Woods I think it was Tom Woods and maybe Lou Rockwell analyzing one of the debates, and they said Ron Paul's position was always that abortion should not be a federal issue. Just like murder is not a federal crime. It's a state-by-state crime. The only time it becomes federal is if you kill like a federal employee or something like this, and then it becomes capital murder, whatever. But abortion should be state by state. Get the federal government completely out of this mess. And that way you take that issue away from the left because they're going to demagogue it to death, even though we all know it's never, ever, ever going away. It's never going to be fully illegal again.
And I hate to break it to the Ben Dominiches of the world, but Gary Johnson's position on abortion is much more mainstream than Wonder Boy Marco Rubio's, which was no abortion under any circumstances, even when it comes to rape and incest or the life of the mother.
Which is an insane position. And it's completely untenable. And it's pointless to even take that stand. I mean, Trump has proven that you can take a stand, and he says he's pro-life, and I think he's full of shit. But he's proven that you can bounce back from taking a stand being, he said, Planned Parenthood does good things. And you and I both know that it does do good things, but the problem is the abortion mill that's attached to it. And also the history and all that stuff. But just beating up that organization alone, it's like Ted Cruz coming out against ethanol subsidies and still winning Iowa. The fact that Trump could say that and then he's still winning evangelicals. But the balls on this guy, so smart, knows everything about how the libertarians should be running their party. They've worked since the 70s when it was founded, in the early 70s. I don't know the exact dates. But they've been working since then, and this will be the first election year that they're on the ballot in all 50 states. Wow. And Dominic is just like, well, everybody that's mad at the Republican Party, we should just unseat the presumptive, and he doesn't even have the nomination yet, nominee at the Libertarian Party because he's pro-life. He's pro-choice, and he's not pro-religion enough. Whatever the hell that means. I mean, libertarians are pretty cut and dry with the religious liberty stuff. Barry Goldwater got hung out to dry over his opposition to the Civil Rights Amendment, which was just based on interfering with public business or private businesses and their conducting of commerce and being able to deny service to people.
If we could find a president of the United States who would, and I'm not even going to get greedy and say eliminate all income taxes and things I would really love to see happen, but just a president of the United States that could balance the budget, privatize Social Security, privatize Medicare, get rid of Obamacare. I don't care if he prays to a picture of Eric Cartman.
Like me?
Right.
Well, that's the
care.
thing. This shows you that he didn't even spend any time researching Johnson's positions, because Johnson has said, look, we're going to cut everything. Social Security and Medicaid need to be cut. We need to privatize the system for younger people, have an opt-out option, all that. He wants to do away with the IRS in a way that would really pretty much do away with them by imposing the fair tax. That's the sales tax one, right? Not the flat tax?
Right, the fair tax.
Yeah, fair tax. He's pro-fair tax, so that's what he wants. And he said, get rid of Social Security payroll taxes. We can fund that through the taxation. And his position is not to build a wall, which I know a lot of these people have a problem with, but make it easier for people to get work visas. And then you don't have to bitch about them not paying income taxes, because there won't be an income tax, but they'll be taxed on consumption. So there's no way to get around taxes.
I really don't give a shit about the wall so much as I just want enough border patrol agents down on the border doing their jobs,
sure,
making sure that the really bad people aren't coming in. And, we've been using this line for a long time when it comes to Dennis Miller's line. I don't care who comes in as long as they sign the
guest book.
The guest book on the way in. That's all I care about. They got to play by the rules like I do. Mm-hmm. We saw the other night in the chat room when we were talking about this on the Snark Factor, how construction, the crews have changed over the years. And we had Red Eye Robot in the chat room who used to do roofing, and the wages have gone down for roofers because these builders are hiring illegals.
Right. And that's a job that can't be outsourced.
Right.
But you can bring in cheap labor, which then supplants the American labor.
And it's so easy for these people who live in their townhomes
right
outside of Washington, D.C., saying, well, this is just, we need to have these people in here, and they're taking jobs that Americans won't take. I'm sorry. Americans want to be roofers. Americans want to hang drywall. Okay? And they've been completely cut out of the market because it is very easy to hire someone who makes a fraction of what a natural-born citizen is making at those positions. So you've got a bunch of general laborers out there that are getting completely shut out of the labor market, and a bunch of people who are pushing for these open border policies don't care because they aren't a general laborer.
That's true. And going back to more of me stumping for Gary Johnson, not only did he say he was going to eliminate personal income taxes, he's going to eliminate corporate taxes. So to get back to how that would affect the economy and those workers that you're talking about, imagine if corporations didn't have to pay tax. Part of it is passed along to us. Actually, the majority is in pricing. But you're also removing the payroll tax of Social Security, which the employee pays half of and the employer pays the other half of. So that's going to free up more money that can just go straight into your pocket from your employer, because that's a cost of them employing you to begin with. So that's an incentive for them to hire people that aren't part of the Social Security system.
And we don't even have to get into Obamacare.
Right. Well, that would be gone out the window. And Johnson fought the entire time he was governor to get school choice throughout the entire state of New Mexico. So there's nobody better on that issue that comes to my mind that's seriously gone up against this.
I mean, forget the fact that he's a libertarian. Going back to when he ran as a Republican, I admired the hell out of him. He was the type of guy that we would want to see in Washington. If somebody comes up and says, you know what we should do? And his first response, he won't even let the sentence come out of the person's face. No.
Exactly.
No. You know what we should do here in Washington? No. No. No, we shouldn't. Whatever you're thinking, unless it's leave town, no. No. No.
Take a year off. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the answer is yes. Other than that, your idea is not good.
Exactly. No, and he did say, I listened to a couple speeches that he gave actually earlier today. There's a whole iTunes stream that's his speeches and interviews and stuff like this. And he talked about how, with the entire time he was governor, he didn't raise a dime in taxes. But he managed to build, I can't remember, like 500 new miles of highway.
Amazing how that works.
We can do these things efficiently.
Yeah.
And he didn't get into, like, prevailing wages and the union issues that you run up against. But he's like, we managed to do this that way with the existing tax structure without raising any money by increasing taxes. So I just think it's so snotty. And I find it kind of repulsive that now the call is, oh, never Trump. Let's go take over this other party that we've turned our noses up at for years. But we want them to come around to our positions on a couple things before we'd consider it. So
unbelievable.
We'll handpick somebody and shove them in there at the top of their ticket.
I got nothing.
Yeah, it's just nothing. Like, make the case for Johnson or one of there are 10 or 12 or 15 people running for that nomination right now.
And I would like to know who he considers libertarian leaning.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't offer up a name. I mean, is it just someone that may have smoked pot in college?
I guess that's so. Maybe he'd be into, like, Jenna Jameson.
Right.
Would she be acceptable if she's pro-life?
Enough already!
It's time for the debut of Ashe Kicking with our good friend Ashe Schow from the Washington Examiner. Hi, Ashe.
Hey.
So let me get this straight. We are now discovering that there is sexual harassment among animals. Is this true?
Yeah. Apparently, a couple researchers at a couple different universities, some in England, some here in America, have decided that they believe one of the reasons that female animals, like birds, are not as pretty as the male of the same species is because so that the females can avoid sexual harassment.
Now, is this like third wave feminist butch-looking lesbians that have put forward this opinion?
No, I mean, the guy that was interviewed for it was a guy. I mean, this
sure?
is like his thing. Yeah. What's his name? Professor David Hoskin.
Did you inquire about his gender identity, though? Or are you just assuming?
I am just assuming, which is very cis of me. So I apologize to Zer Hoskin, just in case. But yeah, that's suggesting that female ornaments could lead to increased sexual harassment by males, and this could be especially costly to the number of offspring you leave behind, is what he said. He said the energetic cost of harassment by either avoiding males or dealing with unnecessary sexual attention would reduce your egg production. Some other theories as to why female birds are not as attractive as male birds is that males are the ones competing for females, so they're the ones that need to look good, or that females are less colorful so they can blend into their surroundings, like camouflage and protect their eggs, or that creating lots of color and ornamentation would reduce female fertility, which, they're kind of there to reproduce and carry on the species. So all of those ideas, I definitely agree with way more than the sexual harassment. But it just shows you like where we are in our country, where in order to get attention for your somewhat crackpot theories, you use human language, sexual harassment, and everybody wants to go with it.
This Professor David Hoskinstein, who is he to objectify birds?
Right? Right? I mean, seriously, you shouldn't even be looking at birds this way.
Has anyone asked Professor David Hoskinstein if female birds specifically, have resting bitch face?
No, I mean, I should probably reach out to him to ask him if they have resting bitch face, if they only get paid 77 cents of the food that the males get. If they get attacked online, all those Tumblr pages,
Yes.
if they would dye their feathers if they could in bright red or bright blue, and wear pointy glasses. All good questions, I think, and just as valid as his theory.
Any word on how much government money was used to conduct whatever kind of survey, whatever kind of study that was conducted by Professor Ishkenstein?
I think it was a grant. Because not everything is government money, but there's this whole other side of science where it's all about getting grant money, where if you can come up with some ridiculous theory, or if you can get the attention of feminists, right?
Yes.
Then you want to get grant money. I mean, that's a lot of surveys that deal with sexual harassment are purely put out there so that they can get grant money to effectively study these things, and then you never hear about those studies.
Well, I think that we can all agree that sexual harassment is foul. See what I did there? Yeah. But how does the sexual harassment in the bird community affect global warming?
Oh, good question. I'm sure it doesn't have nearly the effect as sexual harassment among humans. I mean, all the greenhouse gases that are emitted during asking your friend out on a date, just blow it out of the water, I'm sure.
I'm just concerned that this grant money was diverted away from another study on climate change to the attractiveness of birds and sexual harassment.
I know. What didn't get studied because of this?
Right.
I mean, this study coupled with the study that came out a couple weeks ago that was claiming that I think it was melting glaciers are bad for women. I mean, these studies, while obviously important and scientific, and not at all attention seeking, really do take away from the effects of real science.
Well, wouldn't we benefit as women from global warming? Because I've come to understand there was a study done about women in the office and being freezing cold all the time, and that was sexist.
Right. You would think that being warmer, but there's all these ideas that women would be most affected by the bad weather, that, I don't know, somehow men would survive it and women wouldn't be able to survive all the tornadoes and floods. I don't get what their reasoning is, really. You also have the Congress people who say global warming will lead to rape and prostitution, because when there's fewer resources, women will begin selling themselves. That's how one of the reasons global warming apparently hurts women more, is that women will begin selling their bodies, which, I mean, I don't know. That seems like a better way. Like, what are men going to be able to sell for?
Also, it kind of presupposes that women are big in the agro industries, because I believe that's what they think is being decimated. I don't know if you have stats on how many women there are involved in agricultural pursuits. I'd be interested to know how many of them will actually be displaced come the bad weather.
Yeah, and have to trade sex for corn. I mean, but these are the scientists, these are the consensus people.
This is a story that is almost a week old on your page over at the Washington Examiner, and we didn't say we were going to discuss it, but I just ran across it, and I have to ask you about it. Mattress Girl, the gal that was walking around with a mattress at Columbia University saying that she was raped. The guy that she accused of raping her filed a lawsuit against her. What happened?
Against the university. He didn't sue her. He sued the university because even though he was deemed not responsible by the university allowed her to do the mattress project, get course credit, graduate, carry it across the stage, and basically her project, beyond what most people don't know, is that beyond the mattress is that I believe she also drew a bunch of pictures of his penises. So she essentially carried the mattress around and drew dick pics, and that was her art project, right? And
oh, wait a minute, Ash, didn't she also produce a reenactment video?
That was later. That was not for course credit, but she did use Columbia's dorms to film it. But anyway, while all this was going on, while she was out claiming he was a rapist, putting his name into the media, she finally did, allowing his name to go up on the walls of like bathrooms, branded as a rapist, while she was holding all of these, not slut walks, but these end rape-a-thon things on campus where there was a ton of trash because, the left just loves leaving trash anytime they protest something or celebrate something. I mean, they just leave trash everywhere they go. But the school paid for the cleanup. So effectively was then, putting money toward her defamation campaign against him. And so they believe that the school should be held responsible for allowing this harassment to continue. And the judge disagreed. The judge said that just because she was accusing him and he was a male and the accusation from her was sex-based did not make this sexual harassment, which if you actually think about it, that sort of disproves the whole idea that schools should be investigating sexual assault as gender discrimination in the first place. Because like the judge said, just because it is sex-based doesn't make it sexual discrimination. But of course, that's not going to be used to keep schools from adjudicating felonies, which is what they're doing right now.
Wow. Has he ever filed any complaint or, gone through the legal process regarding her charges against him? He's never sued her in any way?
No, and part of the reason he's not doing that is because it would be a lot more difficult to sue her because she has the entire media behind her. So it would take, they don't really have a backbone. I mean, if you look at the judge and what he was saying for the defamation case against Columbia, I mean, these judges, he straight up said he didn't want to set a precedent for those accused of sexual assault. So these judges have no backbone. So no judge, with the amount of international attention and fame she got for her accusation, no judge is going to want to then, put something, do this, charge her or, let the lawsuit stand. They have no backbone.
So is this the end of the road for him, or is he going to try to hit Columbia again?
No, the judge did not dismiss everything with prejudice, so they can amend their lawsuit. So they're going to do that. They also are going to pursue this lawsuit in state court, which state courts have been a lot friendlier to accused students than federal courts. Federal courts where, especially in New York, where so many of these judges are Obama appointees or Kristen Gillibrand suggestions. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, not a lot of options for those seeking due process.
What has happened to this guy? I mean, has his life been pretty much destroyed?
Well, he doesn't believe he can get a job in America. He was a foreign student from Germany. So he's had to return to Germany because it doesn't matter that he was found innocent. His name is everywhere as this rapist. It's internationally known because she did this mattress project. And who would do a mattress? Who would seek art credit for something if they were lying? I mean, yeah, okay. But so, yeah, he can't really get a job here. So he had to go back to Germany. He basically, luckily people at Columbia didn't know what he looked like. That's how he was able to walk across stage without getting booed. People were only paying attention to her, not really his name. But, yeah, he's never gonna... there's so many people in the media that believe her, even though the police spoke to him for hours and didn't want to file any charges. And Columbia found him not responsible multiple times because she and all her friends decided to accuse him in order to really get rid of him. So, it doesn't matter how many times he was found innocent. The fact that he's never been found guilty, it doesn't matter. He's branded a rapist, and that's going to follow him for the rest of his life.
And do you have any idea of what Miss Salkowitz is up to these days?
She just had an art exhibit, which I didn't want to write about because I don't want to give her any more attention.
Mhm.
But she had an art exhibit where she, or I'm assuming somebody else, built a robot of her or whatever. And she sat there. She basically, it sounded like she just copied Shia LaBeouf.
Okay.
When he did his little art project where anybody could go in and talk to him or yell at him or do whatever they wanted to him in a room for so many minutes or whatever. Because she just sat there and people could ask her any question. Except if she didn't want to answer the question, then the robot had some like pre-answered, some like pre-prepared responses to anything she didn't want to talk about. Which is art.
Yes.
Art. It's basically a press conference, and anything I don't want to say, let me refer you to my crappy robot over here.
Follow Ashe on Twitter at Ashe Schow. Check out all of her work at the Washington Examiner and the New York Observer. We'll talk to you next week, Ashe.
All right, talk to you then.
Enough already!
All right. Well, we don't really have an intro for this, so we'll just say welcome to the Sewing Circle. And this week joining us is Sarah Smith of Howe Creative and Ashe Schow of the Washington Examiner.
Hello.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Hello.
All right. Our first story comes to us from the Daily Mail, and it's about Vicki Cullen, a 28-year-old mother who's developed an addiction to eating foam. She discovered her craving for foam when she was pregnant over 5.5 years ago. She's still gnawing away on her armchair, nibbling on airplane cushions, dining on the furniture of her friends, and snacking on jam-covered sponges.
It started when I was roughly about 4 or 5 months into my pregnancy.
And was it like a craving?
Oh, it started off, I was just sat there on telly and I was just, picking up a bit of a fiddler anyway, and I was picking and it would just happen. I just started eating bits of
And it fulfilled that craving, the urge.
I used to, before that, it used to be like a bath sponge. I used to just chew, the texture, like, babies do in the bath.
Yeah.
It was like that, and then it would just become like a craving, an urge, just an urge.
To do
And then
it.
you got to the stage where you missed it and it made you feel better. There was a satisfaction when you did.
Yes.
Apparently, Vicki has what's known as pica, an eating disorder involving the ingestion of non-nutritive substances. She hasn't had any serious health consequences, and is apparently following her doctor's instructions to take vitamin supplements. She tried cognitive behavioral therapy, but she claims to also have mild OCD, which has prevented her from kicking the sponge eating habit.
I feel so bad for her. Like, pica's a real thing. It can really happen. I mean, people crave dirt or rocks or tree bark. Like, who knows what it could be, but it's a weird thing. But man, is it still funny.
So, Sarah, what would you do if you caught one of your friends eating a chair in your house?
I've had some pretty eccentric friends in my day, and I don't know that it would surprise me that much. But if it was one of my friends who was eating the cushions of my couch, it would be because they had heard or read or decided upon, with their super evolved thinking, that it was a nutrient for you in some way, shape, or form. That they were, because they wanted to avoid having to kill anything to eat it. So therefore, eating armchair would probably be a safe bet. So I wouldn't be too surprised.
It's a good vegan option, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think she's opened the door here for a whole bunch of people who have limited menu options.
Right.
I mean, because she puts jam on it and stuff. It's not like she's just eating armchair.
Right. Sometimes Nutella, which, the people who love Nutella, they'll put it on anything, literally
right,
now.
Everything is just a way to get Nutella into your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty ambitious to start off with a sofa. Don't you think? I mean, why not start off with an ottoman?
It's an armchair.
Oh, it's an armchair? I thought it was a sofa.
No.
It's an armchair, but it's a big armchair.
Oh, that makes it better then. Go ahead.
Well, I just love that she was
going to keep eating. She's got to find another furniture that's made out of the same thing as that armchair, I think is the problem.
Right, but does that mean she's going to furniture stores, like eyeing them all up, and then if they come around to ask her, like, what are you looking for in an armchair? Good flavor.
Right. I'm looking for something in a yellow foam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to go good with Nutella.
Right.
I mean, have you tasted any of these couches?
It's like going to the market, and she's gonna, I bet she could find a very, very sweet furniture dealer who would supply her with samples of all of the stuffings of the different armchairs. It's just about making friends, like anyone can get through anything if you make the right friends. Sounds to me like this young lady just needs to go make some friends with some furniture store owners and get the hookup of samples of what they stuff their different furniture with. That way she can have a never-ending supply of it.
Do either of you think she's angling for like a Scotch Brite sponsorship, so she gets
maybe
a lifetime supply of sponges?
If you look at the photos of her with this couch, it's like her in a little sports top, her like in these knee-high boots and this little tight mini skirt, like eating and she's like posing with her hair all messily done. She's got another one where she's like, I guess in her underwear, like eating them, and she's all curled up on the couch, or like another one where, she's got these ridiculous slippers, but it's like, she's straight up posing with this chair. So yeah, I think she might be angling for some attention with this. Like, hey, I've got this weird disorder, and I would say this is America, but this is England for her. But it's like, hey, this is 2016. How can I make money off of this? How can I get famous off of this? And hey, let's take it to the Instagrams.
Let's take some pictures of me eating this in my little leather miniskirt. Boom.
Yeah.
Winner.
They're like, oh, but get my right angle. Get the right angle. And let me just
Absolutely.
like have my mouth open just right while I eat this sponge that has butter on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an audience for that sort of thing. There's an audience for everything. So,
right. I'm sure there is a corner of the internet that would love to watch women eat things that are not food. Because there has to be that balance, right? Like, so she supplies one side of it. There has to be someone who's on the other side.
Mm-hmm. I bet she could have a really lucrative webcam business.
Mm-hmm.
I think she just needs a business manager. She needs somebody to she obviously is not the brains of this operation. Like, you've got to get a supply of furniture stuffing. You've got to get a revenue stream off your strange addiction. Like, there are things you have to, take your strengths and weaknesses for what they are and use them. Right. So this girl has a thing where she eats armchair stuffing. Like, you just run down the list. How do I make money doing this? How do I this is the world we live in, right?
So you're gonna reach out, Sarah, and offer to be
that's what
manager.
I think that's a really good idea.
Okay.
I'll be like, let me help you. Help me.
And send a picture of yourself just in a tub full of sponges.
Right. Be like, bitch, I've got the hookup. I'll make it rain sponges.
I bet you they don't have Costco's over there.
Oh, I bet they don't.
That's what you need to tempt her with, bulk buying.
Yeah, no, countries like that definitely do not have bulk box stores. That makes it too unequal.
Thank God that they have
100 rolls of toilet paper while someone else only has 6, and that's just not fair.
Well, if one of them's going to eat 95 of those rolls or 94 of those rolls, then they're back to even, right?
Yeah,
that's very true. There is people who eat toilet paper. I've seen that too. Toilet paper eaters. Which I guess is something to do while you're on the toilet, but still just like... It's like, oh, my phone's dead. I'm just going to eat some of this toilet paper.
Do they do it like spaghetti?
Yes.
It stays on the roll and you just keep eating and eating. You never tear it off.
I'll send you videos.
That sounds oddly satisfying. Not the eating of it, but like tearing toilet paper long ways in long strips.
Oh.
There's something about, and just keep pulling. Oh my, there's something oddly satisfying sounding about that.
Well, reach out to Sponge Girl, and then you two can team up.
There you go. Oh, we would have great webcam traffic, because it's basically like what I'm thinking of is like human kitty actions. Like, wow, that would be like what a cat does is like pull a roll of toilet paper off like that and like shred it up while they're doing it. So we've got like cat lady with her toilet paper roll. We've got leather skirt lady with her armchair stuffing eating. I mean, that's a big audience we're reaching.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who could round that out.
Yeah, we need a third.
A guy who eats dirt.
I got it. Nope, I got it. The bitch who is in love with inanimate objects. Have you seen that?
Oh, I saw the lady that married the Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower, yes.
Yeah.
One of those. Yeah. One of those people who like love, or even just somebody, you know, they like are in love with a fence or like whatever it is. We need one of those.
Okay.
I think that's
we could pitch this to a network.
I think so too.
Put them all in one house.
Something about like the marginalized something, like we have to use the term marginalized in the name of the show.
The marginalized, underrepresented PICA sufferers and their friend who anthropomorphizes inanimate objects.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah. I think we can get a nice acronym out of that. Yeah. All right, Fingers, do you have any crazy bitch stories you want to add to this?
No.
All right, then let's move along to our other story. So according to Jessica Valenti of The Guardian, telling Hillary Clinton to smile is subtle sexism. Valenti spent an excessive amount of time, read more than 2 seconds, fretting over a tweet from Joe Scarborough, which read, quote, "Smile, you just had a big night, #primary day." The tweet was made during a victory speech Clinton gave following a clean sweep last Tuesday night. The feminist blogosphere lit up with charges of sexism immediately, leading some to wonder, what the hell can men say to women that will not offend them? So, Ash, how stabby do you get when a man tells you to smile?
Oh, all the stabby. Just all the knives come out. I mean, I've always found this to be so ludicrous as an argument for sexism, because we've always been taught as a society to protect women and children, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You protect the next generation and the one who can bring that generation into life. And so I don't think there's a bad thing about protecting them. So when you see a woman who seems upset, your instinct is to go over and see what's wrong. But sometimes, like, you know, I mean, not in Scarborough's case, but like for me, if I'm walking down the street and somebody tells me to smile, that's just like an instinct of like, you know, want to cheer somebody up, but you only have a couple seconds. So you just smile, right? And my instinctual response is to then smile because somebody noticed that I looked upset and doesn't want me to be upset. I don't look at it as a bad thing. If Hillary Clinton gave a speech and she looked miserable after she just won 5 states, then, you know, be happy. And it's not like you wouldn't say that to anybody else. You know, if Bernie Sanders was out there yelling after he won a bunch of states, it would be like, dude, why are you so mad? Like, you just won.
Lighten up, Bern. It's a celebration.
Right. But it's just, Valenti has to, like, her whole career is finding sexism where there isn't sexism and writing columns for The Guardian about trying to convince people that everything is sexist. And I mean, that's just her job at this point.
But isn't that the whole, like, problem with it all? Like, isn't
grievance
feminism
culture?
Like, wasn't feminism supposed to be about like empowerment and like, so now I'm all of a sudden supposed to be some damaged person if someone tells me to smile? Like, I'm supposed to be offended by being told to smile as an empowered, independent woman? That
right.
a word that someone says to me is just supposed to, you know, knock me down into a blithering mess and can't possibly, like, Jessica Valenti is an insane person.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hearing someone tell you to smile should, you know, make it difficult for you to do your job, go about your business, live your life. It's what's keeping you down and the patriarchy up, apparently. The word smile. I mean, that's what these people like her are arguing. And it's just, how is this empowering? Telling women, like you said, telling women that you're supposed to basically curl up in a ball whenever you hear anything from a
I've
man.
Been victimized.
Ever.
Someone told me to smile. That man told me to smile. He's victimized me. And it's like, wow.
Arrest him.
If I'm really pissed, like if I'm walking down the street and I am pissed and somebody has gotten under my, you know, like, and it's on, like something's about to go down and somebody tells me to smile, I have a very simple response to them. I flick them off. and keep walking. Because if I'm that pissed that I've got that look on my face, that it feels compelled to tell me to smile, then they get the middle finger. And I have no qualms about that. And I don't feel offended that they told me to smile, but I'm just telling them there's no fucking way I'm going to smile right now. Right. I don't know if I can say the F word, but
yes, you can.
Yes.
You absolutely can. But do you guys feel like they're also ascribing motives to the men that are saying this, as if it's some kind of belittling statement?
Sure.
Absolutely. When there's no intention from Joe Scarborough to belittle Hillary.
They are reinforcing the patriarchy by giving him that power over.
Ooh, exactly. There you go.
Did either of you see Hillary's speech on Tuesday night?
No.
I can't listen to her speak.
Well, I had it on mute.
I did, because I remember I texted the boss and said, I can't handle it. It was 8 years of clipping through Obama speeches, and now I'm supposed to do 4 years of clipping through this woman. I don't know if I'm going to make it. So no, I did watch that one. It was horrible. But
you saw her and she looked angry, right? She didn't look like somebody who just won.
No, she didn't look pleased. She looked tired. And you want to know why she looked tired? Because she's old and she's tired. She looked tired and angry. It was way past her bedtime.
But let's be clear to all the feminists out there, Bernie Sanders, same thing, tired and cranky.
Also old, tired and cranky.
Also old.
Very.
And do you think it's impolite when he interrupts her at the debates?
She interrupts him.
According to Valenti, he does it 3 times as much as she does.
Well, of course it's only a problem for the man to do it.
Yeah, because she keeps talking.
Yeah.
Are you saying she is a woman
she's winning? He needs to get the GOP. They interrupt each other all the time. The people who interrupt the most are the ones who aren't doing as well in the polls. Because you have to get that airtime.
Yep, because you ain't going to get it on your own.
Yeah.
Or on their behalf or whatever. You know what I mean.
Maybe one of you can explain this to me. I don't understand the argument that's being made, this protective, we're going to shield her from all sexism, but yet we still think she should be the commander-in-chief of the largest army the world has ever known. How do those two things jive with each other?
They don't. Well, that's the thing. Is it we have to protect Hillary Clinton from all of these things? Well, you know what? She needs to be, if she's going to be commander-in-chief, she needs to put on her big girl panties and friggin' deal with this herself. And if she's going to get offended over every little thing, then, she has no business being in charge of anything.
Right. Well, but also these are the same people who, George Bush is a, dysfunctional, illiterate man-child and the dumbest man who's ever been in the Oval Office, but also a, mastermind, war criminal, capable of manipulating and influencing world issues to his benefit.
Sure.
So, these people their intellectual consistency is not their thing in the first place. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then you got Obama, who is the light bringer and was going to fix everything, but he's also not responsible for anything that happens at the same time. So,
right. And anybody who detracts from him is just racist.
Right. These people have no intellectual consistency. So I expect nothing of them. I expect them to be totally fine with the idea of Hillary Clinton is a fragile woman that needs to be protected from being offended, and she should also be the leader of the free world.
I can accept that. Fingers?
Crazy.
Yes.
Are we all smiling?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No resting bitch faces in this crowd.
No, but seriously, have you ever told a woman to smile?
Listen, I'm 44 years old. Mm-hmm. And I learned around the age of 18 that I should not walk up to a woman and say, you should really smile more. Any man that does that should expect a verbal slap in the face.
But at this point, any man should expect any kind, a verbal slap in the face from doing anything for a woman. Look at how difficult it is to open a damn door for a woman. Doesn't matter if you open doors for whoever's coming behind you.
I was giving on the Metro. I was getting on the metro in D.C. once, and the station was pretty empty. There were two women behind me. The doors to the train open up. I step aside. I put my hand in the direction of the door to let the ladies know they could go first, and you would have thought I peed on their shoes.
Wow.
Well, you are history's greatest monster.
That's true.
For that and other reasons, but mainly that.
Right.
But like that's the thing, is that like I hold the door open for whoever's coming up behind me. But a man can't do that anymore because it's gonna be looks like he's sexist. When it's like he could open the door for anybody. You open the door for a man who's carrying heavy boxes. You open the door for anybody who's behind you. And you might get yelled at for it, which is just what we're teaching now is that men should just never ever speak to women. Just ever. Because you never know when you're gonna get one of the crazy bitches that's gonna yell at you for daring to speak to Queen Her.
How dare you? Well, down here in Texas, I get a lot of, like, if I'll open a door and hold it open and let someone in front of me. Like, if I just do, I don't know. And they are, like, shocked and appalled at my behavior. Like, if a man is walking up to the door and I open it and just kind of let them in, they're not in a mean way. They're not, like, mad at me, but they're just, like, pleasantly shocked and appalled, I guess, would be a better way. They're just like, what? I went to a movie with somebody a few weeks ago, and we were leaving the movie, and I opened the door and held it open as he came behind me, and he was like, "Wow, like, did you just hold?" Like, it was shocking.
There are so many rules regarding etiquette that have gone completely out the window. One that I still try to follow that a lot of people just don't know anymore. If you're walking down the street with a woman, the man should be the one that's closest to the road.
Yep.
But stuff like that, it's just it's completely lost on our society today.
Does anyone have time for a fun fact?
Sure.
That tradition, I learned this. You may or may not know, I studied the theater in my youth, and that tradition started. And I learned this somewhere along the line, learning like Shakespearean theater. People would dump out their chamber pots and out their windows. And so therefore the man was more likely to have a pot thrown on him than the woman because she was shielded by the little awnings above the things. And the man was out exposed to potentially have a chamber pot dumped on him. And that's why the man walks on the outside of the sidewalk.
To literally take the shit.
Correct.
That's unacceptable these days.
Oh yeah, no, that won't happen. That was I learned that one. I didn't learn that until I moved to the South. I moved to Memphis in 2011. I was walking down the street with somebody after work, and he was like, "Oh, nope," and like moved me to the inside and walked on the outside.
Do they still use chamber pots in Memphis?
They don't, but they have Southern charm and hospitality and chivalry.
Sure, and if a car comes careening onto the sidewalk,
right, and that's why it makes sense now. But there were no cars. This started before cars.
Yeah, my parents, they always made sure that me and my brother walked on the inside for that very reason, for the potentially getting hit by cars. They never let us walk on the outside. So, I mean, I grew up just, it was a safety thing. And now, I mean, it's always been a safety thing, and I don't have a problem with it. If you want to tell me in any way possible that you value my life and want to protect it, I'm not going to scream at you.
Yep.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I will not be offended by that.
All right. So anything else? Any more parting thoughts? Any more fun facts?
Feminists just need to chill. Seriously, fucking chill.
Yeah.
Well, do you think Hillary winning this could shut them up once and for all, or you think it's going to get worse? Yeah.
No, because look, like Obama didn't heal race relations. He made that worse. Yeah. Because everything became about race. When it's Hillary, everything is going to be about sex. Everything. Oh, yeah. If you dare to disagree with her, it's just because you're a sexist. Even if a woman's disagreeing, it's internalized misogyny. I mean, there's no winning anymore. Like, that's just how it's going to be under President Clinton.
Right. Excuse me, Madam McPantsuit.
Oh,
yes. Yes, one. Get it right.
So basically, we should move to South Yorkshire and move in with that Vicky chick and start eating sponges.
I'm thinking Canada.
Oh God,
they have Trudeau.
Yeah,
not any better up there.
Yeah, he's worse. Yeah,
but it's always been. It's not like they're going from like No, I'm
Right.
not going anywhere. I'm definitely not in
No,
that camp.
the three of us with the speech laws there would not last long outside of the beaches.
Lieberland
Yeah.
seems like a nice place to go and build a cabin and
could work.
perhaps live freely.
Narnia.
That's true. Well, Cuba's
Narnia is
opening
another-
back up.
Yeah.
Cuba.
Hey, it only took Che and Castro 2 years to take that place down. How long do you think it would take the three of us?
I give us like 4 months tops.
Yeah,
It would be easy.
that on it. Well, if we got nothing else, then we should wrap up this sewing circle. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Sarah. And Fingers, I guess, thank you, too.
I guess.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
contribution, Fingers.
Yeah, thanks for sitting around, Fingers.
That's what I'm here for.
Enough already!
Kerry Picket, the Daily Caller, is joining us now. Hi, Kerry. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Well, apparently, John Kasich is preparing for shenanigans at the convention. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Right. We have John Kasich, who is hiring a bunch of, as I like to call them, 1976ers. These are consultants who were around during the 1976 GOP convention. Of course, it includes guys like Charlie Black, for example, who was around for the campaign at the time during the 76 convention to help Ford get the votes he needed to beat Reagan during the convention at the time. And this is one of these things that, Kasich, who mathematically has no chance to get to the majority of these delegate votes, he figures perhaps they can get the nomination that way, and perhaps be a third round of a balloting. So it's very interesting how Kasich is sort of planning this sort of proposal to get to a contested convention.
And now, is this going to necessitate a rule change at all, or is he just thinking with the current rules as they stand?
Well, yes and no. See, first of all, a rule change should have happened, if it was supposed to happen, at the last RNC meeting.
And when did that happen?
And that happened way back in December.
Okay.
And essentially, that's where all the proposals were being put forth, and so on and so forth. However, if another rule change is going to happen, that means that it would have to happen right on the convention floor. Now, at that point, the Convention Rules Committee will already be formed. It'll be of different people than of the Standing Rules Committee that the RNC has all time. And at that point, you'll have to have not just the approval of the Convention Rules Committee, but also of all the delegate members of the RNC convention. So it'll be much tougher to pass on the floor, and you're talking about a ferocious rules battle. One of the things that, though, that is interesting is what a RNC rules member told me very recently is that delegates are not bound to the results of their to their primary on the first ballot, and that's something that sort of caused a stir this past week.
And I've seen both sides of that argued now. There's some saying, no, that's not true. And I know you've reported that it is. And do you have an idea of what the truth really is?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that it's true. He is saying that this particular RNC rules member is saying that it's true. This particular RNC rules member, his argument is that essentially what happened in 1976 during the convention, that was the very first convention that delegates were bound to the results of their primary. Okay? Because what happened at the time was Ford didn't trust that the people who had pledged, or the delegates who had pledged their allegiance to him during the primaries, were actually going to cast their votes for him in the convention. So the Ford people got a rules change to make sure that the primary results would end up be binded to the delegates, and they would have to vote the way of their state primaries of at least 19 states. So what ended up happening was, of course, there's a big brouhaha. I had the video up actually at the Daily Caller of like a Reagan lawyer getting very upset about this, and then of course Ford ended up getting the nomination. In 1980, however, that particular rule, known as the Justice Resolution, by the way, was rescinded. It was gone, which meant that these delegates were no longer bounded by the results of their state primaries. So, however, after the 1980 convention and all the conventions thereafter, what did we have? We didn't have any more brokered or contested conventions. It was always like a favorite son, or there was an incumbent president who. So you'd have someone like Ronald Reagan. You'd have someone like George H.W. Bush or George W. Bush. All these GOP candidates or nominees were coming into the convention with a majority of delegate support. So there was never an issue of whether or not delegates should be binded or not. So no one was even thinking in those terms. However, now all of a sudden everyone's thinking in those terms because Donald Trump may not have 1,237 votes from the delegates, which is the majority of the delegates going into the convention. And that's why everyone's talking about it now. Everyone's like, oh my God, where is this coming from? Well, it's always been that way, but it's just that we haven't been dealing with the rules very closely because there was always a candidate going in with a majority of support.
And is there anywhere that we could dig into the rules if I wanted to? I mean, it seems so complex and kind of ridiculous, but is there some spot I can go to and say, these are the rules as they stand right this minute, and try to get a grasp on it myself?
Well, there are transcripts that the RNC has of old meetings, old conventions. To get a hold of them is a little difficult, but sometimes they get released.
So there's no rule book that we could reference?
Oh, there is a rule book. There absolutely is. I mean, however, the rule book is about 1,500 pages long. And in fact, I mean, one of the people who is a huge expert on the rules book is Morton Blackwell. He's the national committee man from Virginia. And he is an incredible expert on the rules. And I actually asked him about this particular theory on the delegates not being binded to their state results from their primaries, and he is doubtful of it. That's the other side. He does not see this changing anytime soon, as far as he's like, I don't see the delegates who are currently bounded to their states being unbinded from their states in the first balloting when a convention time comes.
But different states have different rules governing whether their delegates are bound or not, correct?
Correct. So, like, for example, the first RNC rules member that I spoke to who believes that all RNC delegates are unbound, he comes from a state where his delegates are unbound. His name is Kerry Hoagland. He has been all over now, CNN and MSNBC and Fox, but I've been speaking to him as well. And keep in mind, Curley, he has been talking about this since 2008. This isn't something that he brought up as a result of Trump's candidacy. The irony is, though, is that his claims and his interpretations of the rules are all of a sudden being used for the establishment. However, he was someone who got very upset about the whole issue that happened in 2012 to Ron Paul during the convention, understandably so. what happened then. I think many of us remember Romney was having problems with a delegate support because there are a number of delegates who were Ron Paul delegates, and so they figured maybe we can sort of bump Ron Paul out by changing the rules, by it being previously having a 5-state threshold, which basically it said that in order to be a GOP nominee for the presidency, you have to have at least 5 states supporting you, or at least a majority of the 5 states supporting you. Well, the Rules Committee, via the Romney campaign persuasion, changed that to having 8 states supporting you. And of course, Ron Paul's campaign didn't have 8 states supporting him, and that bumped him from a consideration of being the nominee. And of course, understandably so, that made many Ron Paul supporters and delegates very angry, and it also kept him from doing a floor speech, and it also kept many of the Ron Paul delegates it kept them from casting a vote in the second ballot. They weren't allowed to do any speeches whatsoever on behalf of Ron Paul. It was a huge uproar. So Curly Hogland, along with Morton Blackwell, criticized that rule change because it caused huge divisions within the party. So,
right, and now that
things.
8-state threshold is something that they're looking at as a problem now, right? To getting anyone through but Trump. Because Cruz, has he gotten 8 yet, or is he still at 7?
He has not gotten 8 yet. Trump just got through the 8-state threshold. This 8-state threshold is known as Rule 40B, and it's something that both Curly and Morton Blackwell have been trying to get rid of for a long time, even since the Romney proposal came up. But in fact, back at the last RNC meeting, Morton Blackwell tried to put forth a proposal that would have gotten rid of the 8-state threshold, and it passed in the Rules Committee. But at the very last moment, some members ended up questioning it for a moment, and then it was it ended up being reconsidered. So it was basically gutted, and the Romney 8-state threshold ended up staying in the rules instead. So it was almost vanquished, but it's still there today.
And does that only hold true for the first ballot, or is that true throughout? So we couldn't see somebody that hasn't won any states come in and end up with the nomination.
Well, that's funny you should ask that. Once again, the only way that can happen is if someone brings a proposal to the floor of the convention. That is, it is much harder to get something like that passed, because then you're getting into a ferocious rules battle, as Morton Blackwell described it. And it's more difficult because you're trying to persuade people on the fly, as opposed to letting them look at your proposal, and you have time to get a coalition together to help push your proposal. And so, you can be arguing it for hours, if not days, and so on and so forth. So that could be a problem. But silver lining wise, for policy wonks like me, it's very interesting to watch. And it's fascinating to actually have people sort of learn how rounds of balloting happen to elect members of the RNC, because this happens also not just at the RNC chairman level, but also at the state RNC. At the state level. So, for example, if you have a state GOP chairman who is going to be elected, or like a state committee woman, and like state committee man, it's the same structure. They have rounds of balloting. So if there's 4 or 5 people running for chairman, they have the same rounds of balloting. They have the same rules, fights, and so on and so forth, except it happens at like a local Holiday Inn as opposed to a huge convention center in some big city.
So basically, if shenanigans are going to go down, it's going to be on the convention floor.
Absolutely.
And will this
Absolutely.
only come into play if Trump doesn't walk in there with 1,237 delegates? Or could it
Well,
happen
it's funny-
regardless?
It's funny you should mention that, because I was just talking to another former Republican official, and his contention is, even if Trump comes in with exactly 1,237 or 1,239, that's going to be a problem. It's sort of like he better have just a lot more than, say, the 1,237, because people want to be assured that he has the support that he's been pledged. So, because some people may jump at the last minute, so on and so forth. However, if he comes in with, say, 1,220, some people can also argue, oh, come on, it's just 17 people. We can get those people to a jump. It's no big deal. We can find 17 people. So, either way, whether he has just enough or not, or perhaps just short of, there's going to be some arguments one way or another.
And now, are these campaigns staffing up, like floor people, to go fight this battle?
Oh, certainly, certainly. I mean, whether it's the Kasich people, the Cruz people, or the Trump people, their job right now is to introduce themselves to all the delegates, and try and make sure that like perhaps if they're not in support of them, that maybe they will be in support of them. What can they offer them, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there are some interesting conversations going on right now, and what's fascinating is, while things can be promised right now, things can be promised later as well, and it's one of those things that, even though people will certainly try certain things on the convention floor, ultimately, right now, if the Trump supporters see something that they deem as, shall we say, not kosher, no matter how technically correct the rules are, the Republican Party could very well see a pretty bad backlash.
And will you be present in Cleveland for all this madness?
Of course I will be, and I'm sure you and Fingers will be as well.
I don't know if it's worth going to Cleveland for this. It's more fun to watch on TV, I think.
Oh, come on. I think you want to see everybody full size for something like this.
I don't know. Fingers, do you have any desire to be in the middle of that
Absolutely. Mess? If they would have picked Vegas, I would have been there in a heartbeat. Cleveland, Ohio in July. Who makes that decision? You can catch all of Kerry's great work over at the Daily Caller and follow her on Twitter at Kerry Picket. Kerry, thank you so much.
Sure thing. Take care.
Fox News' Pat Caddell is joining us right now. How are you, Pat?
Good. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Well, Donald Trump announced that he's not going to be at the next GOP debate. If he keeps winning primaries, should he go to another debate? How would you advise him?
Well, I didn't think. I said before I wouldn't have gone to the last debate, although I was pleased that they all were civil. I mean, I think at some point, particularly, I wouldn't go to a debate. I mean, why does he want to hear does he keep saying the same questions over and over again? Although, on the other hand, if he had something new to say about his opponents, which I think he could say, he could go. It's certainly a place I think you get the issues to, trade, which both of them, Cruz has been ambivalent about trade, and John Kasich is a supporter of NAFTA and TPP. If he went after, raised the question about Cruz's money from Wall Street and stuff, it's hard to believe that he and Hillary draw from the same sources, but they seem to. That might be more interesting, but they just go through the same stuff they've been going through and doing the same stuff. I don't know what they get out of it.
And if you were in the Ted Cruz camp, how would you react to Trump not debating? How should they play this?
Well, I'd be very unhappy. I would keep challenging him to debate, but his problem wasn't that. His problem was that Kasich wouldn't debate. Kasich is running, it's a little hard. They would have had a two-person. Fox was willing to have a two-person debate, which might have benefited both of them, but they chose not to have a two-person debate. And, Kasich did, which kind of left Cruz holding the bag there, not very happy, I suspect.
Well, was Fox willing to just give Cruz that time to talk on his own? Okay.
No, never you give anybody 2 hours for themselves. So it was 2 or none,
Sure.
So I think that was a given. But as I said, it's Kasich is the wild card here in many ways.
And Kasich doesn't have a chance in hell, right?
I don't see how he does. I mean, I listened to him all morning this morning, and I can't figure out what he's saying. I'll go to the convention. They're going to nominate me because I can win and because I have a record, and yet he's been turned down in every primary, including after he, except for Ohio. I don't think winning your home state is a qualification if that's all you have. It's kind of hard to make the case that no one else will vote for you but the people who you govern, It's a little bit, that's a toughie to handle, I think.
Well, now you have Kasich kind of ramping up for some sort of establishment GOP shenanigans at the convention.
Yeah. I mean, he's hired Charlie Black and who's the other person he hired? Oh, Stu Spencer, who are on opposite sides of the 76 thing to try to do the delegates. And, and a lot of shenanigans will be going on at the state conventions. Whether the Trump people are able to protect their delegates is another matter. That's why they came up with the rule that they did last time after Rand Paul to keep him from getting on the to keep Rand Paul off the platform. Was this Rule 40 thing, which they put in, which you had to win 8 states to be nominated, put your name in nomination or speak or something, whatever it was, whatever the anti-democratic rule they Romney people were imposing, which was what they were doing against the grassroots and the base last time. They can revoke that rule. There's a guy who was being interviewed this week on who's a Rules Committee member, who I think spoke for much of the Rules Committee, who was my iconic figure now, who said that, don't you understand, the party chooses the nominee, not the people, but that's a mistaken notion. And I'm going, really? That'll be news to all the voters. But that kind of attitude will prevail. And in 2012, remember, Rand Paul, by the time the conventions came, managed to take Iowa, a state he finished 4th in, and Louisiana, a state he got 6% in, and ended up having a majority, having significant percentage of that delegation. So, this choosing, remember, the state committees in many states will be choosing the delegates, the physical people going. And even if they're bound to vote for someone on the first ballot, they're not bound on rules votes, on credentials votes, or on platform votes. So you can have a lot of false delegates there and whatever. So this could get really, really hairy.
Now, when you have somebody like Donald Trump, who's an outsider to all this, is it a big disadvantage for him when it comes to dealing with these state conventions?
Well, yes, I think so, unless they've got people there to protect his people there as delegates who've already been elected, whatever, to protect his hold. It is, and look, the Republicans, they are in full. I watched morning shows on Sunday morning, and they are in full blown revolt of either saying, better the party blow up, better we lose than have him take it over. This is the worst thing for the establishment is the outsider who seizes the party. and that the empire will not stand that. They would rather, as they said, lose, or have a third party or whatever, than let him win if he could win. So some of that's unconscious, and some of that's just on power. But it is I suspect between now and then either one of the things happen. And a lot of it's up to Donald Trump. Let's understand that. Whether he elevates his game and starts behaving like a president, like a man who might be president, or whether he's going to continue the way he's been going, which is scaring the living hell out of a lot of people, including people who liked what he was saying.
Now, have you moved into that camp now?
No, I'm analyzing. I am an analyst on this. I am saying that it is, you got to evolve with as the season goes. The acceptability threshold rises. He has high negatives. He needs to deal with that. He could. I'm more frustrated knowing Donald Trump personally, but I know that he's not what the caricature is, and yet he is not addressing dealing with that when he could deal with it from strength.
So if you were advising him, what would you tell him to do to try to turn down those negatives?
Well, the first thing is to stop, if you pardon my expression, pissing all over everyone. This is, I don't know if that's acceptable for radio.
It is.
You're
fine.
You can do that for this. Okay. Really, I mean, lying kid and this, enough. You're the front runner. You want to challenge these people, challenge, as I said, on issues. They have a lot of vulnerabilities. You have a very strong message, number one. Number two, you cannot tolerate violence at your meetings. Yes, they're being provoked, but you've got to speak out against that sort of thing or make it clear these are people who want to stop your message and not just you. He's got to, and he is framing it more about his own movement and his own people, but he's got to do that. And also, I think he's much better in settings. I saw this with Anderson Cooper in New Hampshire in the interviews, some other town meetings. He did that when he was last week with Christie interviewing him. When he's in position, he's a smart man, and he's suggesting to people he doesn't know anything. He knows a lot. But he needs that kind of interview process or whatever, and he needs a process where he can empathize. I think these rallies are all very nice, but they tend to bring out a more belligerent figure here, and he's in a different kind of election. Also, Donald Trump has lots of people who will testify, people who work for him and others. I remember being impressed with what Frank Graham said, Reverend Frank Graham, talking about the people he has helped without publicity or anything else in their lives, a man of indicating a man of great empathy, a man who can also talk to his own. I mean, he's got lots of employees. People adore him. I know people who work for him. They all think he's great. They think he's great. He's very stubborn, but he listens, and he's got a great. Everyone admits his kids are wonderful. That's not an accident. Even his opponents admit that. So there's more aspects of him that he could emphasize in this. It's called rounding out the picture. And at one point, he could confess that he has made mistakes. That is not self-defeating. Sometimes humility helps. A little humility. In Donald's case, a little would go a long, long way.
Now, there's a piece today in the Washington Times about how a Trump versus Clinton race could reshape the electoral map. Do you believe that's the case? And which states could Trump switch from blue to red?
Look, part of it is we are in March. We have a long way to go to November. That's why I just stressed the things when you asked that I did.
Right.
The danger for the Democrats is if he cured some of his negatives. And remember, if he's running against Hillary Clinton, her negatives are enormous too. And she's not new on the scene. She has been there a long time. So I mean, but he is pulling in voters who have not been voting. I mean, a number of percentage who have not been voting, particularly of not just white men, but blue collar, less than college educated men and women. who have not been voting, who feel that that the things they believe in are not spoken to. And they're not. I mean, what none of the candidates running who want to stop Trump, notice what they don't talk about. They don't talk about his supporters. They act like they don't exist. That this is the creation of Donald Trump's imagination, his persona, or whatever he's doing. Donald Trump, as I have said before, is not the independent variable here. The driving force in both races to some extent, and for the vast majority of people who have not participated in primaries, is a disbelief. It's not about just, they're angry people. We're talking about 75 to 80% of the American people who believe the government is their enemy. That Washington, these very same people in the press, are motivated from left to right in this country, a massive agreement that the politics in this country is run by these cohorts of insiders who in Washington who serve their own interests over the country, who are corrupt. That's the word that's not really spoken in this election, is the word corruption, and that they are letting that America's burning while they're fiddling in their own battles, and you can see that in the numbers overwhelmingly. The economic engine of that has become trade. I released a survey a week ago that showed that after the Michigan primary, that showed, my God, how much that's now become a voting issue. People know that the country's getting screwed, and they're getting screwed. And no one will talk to you. You have all these academics saying, oh, no, you must have freedom. No, it's good for them. Look, 71% of the American people believe that the same people who are rigging the political process are rigging trade for their own benefits. Okay? So this is across the board. These are very powerful sentiments. A country of people who feel that, the 68%, I've had two major surveys, projects that I've been involved in this last 2 months, that show same number, 68%, who believe the country's in flat-out decline. None of that you hear. You hear all these people about how good they are. You hear the David Brookses and the Tom Friedman complaining, how dare you question government? Oh, my gosh, our government is so great. No, these people have failed. And the only people who believe that crap are the people writing it. And it's like they've never gone out and visited. They don't know any Americans. The Washington Post said David Marin is not the person I would have chosen, because I think he's biased as they come or whatever, to go out and explore American anger in a 3-point series, which I admit I have not read all of yet. I'm only starting to read. But it is like, oh my God, these are unhappy people. They're not just angry. They have a right to be unhappy. They have been disgusted and deprived of the way this republic is supposed to operate in this democracy. They are not being represented. And they are finding what the government has done is so bad and failing so much that they want to toss Washington out. Now, you get a candidate with a real message on that, you'll light up the country. You don't have to attack anybody. All you have to do is expose them. Look, I watched this the other day, and I assume you all did. The Flint hearings in Congress, where the Democrats were attacking Governor Snyder and whatever, and then the Republicans were attacking the EPA. And meanwhile, nothing has been done in Flint. We discover we have water problems going to the USA in many cities where lead poisoning is going on. The government doesn't work. It is not solving problems and doesn't want to. It is these people are in, first of all, Elizabeth Warren the other day, who I have tended to like for her passion, but got up and answered on CBS this week on the radio, asked whether Hillary Clinton should release the transcripts of her speeches to Wall Street. She's the most anti-Wall Street person. And she's going, oh, no, the candidates are having a right to it. She wouldn't answer the question because she's putting party above principle. They're all tired of this. And what this country may get in the process, if this continues in this vacuum, and remember the Wall Street Journal in their last poll had, which I thought was interesting, 56% of the people said they couldn't imagine voting for Hillary Clinton, and 67% couldn't imagine voting for Donald Trump. That's a vacuum, folks. And there is a place to be filled, and the question is, will it be filled? If they fail to go on, we would have the lowest turnout in history the way this is going. But to go back to your question, I mean, you get all the lowest. If, in fact, Trump is able to cure some of this problem, and with the voters I'm talking about that he's pulling in, he could put Michigan, he could put Pennsylvania particularly, Ohio, Wisconsin, the Rust Belt into play. He puts other places, we just don't know the dynamics. And then he's got states he puts the other way because of his problems with Hispanics and what he's created. But he is a disruptor. He makes the calculus. The reason I say, for instance, Cruz, I've thought all along Cruz is a dead loser because he's such an ideologue.
Right.
And if you force an election in the normal context, that loses. If you change the context of the election to the things I'm talking about, to a government doesn't work, a politics that's corrupt, a country that is where the voters are not sovereign, but they are to be pawns in this partisan game, then you have a different equation.
So you're basically calling for a libertarian candidate to jump in.
A libertarian? I didn't say that.
Well, that's
a libertarian?
It sounds like the libertarian message. Right.
No, it's not. It's not a libertarian because it's about strong foreign policy. Look, the country attitudinally is actually moving, and not that the media would have any knowledge because they pay no attention anyway, it is moving center right. It's not moving left. It's moving right. Whether it's on Muslims, on the Muslim threat, it's 3-1 people say you should use the term that you cannot, you've given a choice on a wording of the question we did, that is that you can't defeat something you don't call by its proper name. That's why you should call it Islamic fundamentalist terrorism or whatever the hell it phrases. And the second one was, oh no, that's charged with a broad brush and hurts people. It's 3-1. It's 2.5-1 if people who understand what sanctuary cities are to defund them. There is attitudes about Iran, which are overwhelmingly negative, and they're shooting off missiles, ballistic missiles, with destroy Israel in Hebrew, wipe Israel off the face of the earth in Hebrew on the missiles, in defiance of the agreement that we signed with them, that John Kerry laid down and capitulated across, that 2/3 of the American people opposed, and nobody in Congress gave a damn what they thought. I mean, there are so many places to run this. It's not libertarian at all. It is about what I would call the Smithian election. It is about something where the people are allowed a choice to take back their government. Now, whether Trump can do that by getting over his problem, Hillary Clinton will never get there. She is a personification of corruption. She, her husband, that whole foundation, which is corruption center. I mean, they all should be in jail for what they've done there.
Right.
It's not even close. And Trump's problem is that he is playing into a caricature that is costing him because he's terrifying the hell out of people, including people who like him. So either he makes up his message and cleans up that act, or the vacuum will be such that somebody will try to enter it, whether they can enter all of it or part of it. But I think that will happen because right now the American people are not going to accept being told that they have no control over their country.
So we're 8 months out from Election Day, give or take a few weeks. But so what unforeseen things could pop up that would hand the nomination either to Trump or Hillary? And let's just assume that they're both.
Well, not just a nomination, but the election, the shape of the elections. We can have, another terrorist incident. Concern over that is very high in the country, although neither side talks about that much, particularly Democrats never mention it. Terrorism does on the exit poll doesn't rate for them, but it rates with everybody else. Remember, we're dealing with a primary electorate on both sides. We are not dealing with the entire country. We're dealing with the most partisan people in both parties. And with both parties represent less than half the country at this point. And this is certainly, so remember that. This is not a mirror reflection of everybody in the country. So you've got the terrorist event could happen. you could have an Iranian event. John Kerry and that capitulation of that treaty that Obama did to give them $150 billion and allows them, and it will not stand up to them testing ballistic missiles and short-term ballistic missiles, well, long-term. The short-term with Hebrew phrases painted on them, wipe Israel from the face of the earth. Really great stuff. They have been humiliating our prisoners. They could do something. The country is very disturbed by this, by huge margins. People believe that the Iranians, what happened with our sailors, was not, getting them back was not a solution because we had good diplomacy with Kerry. They thought it was an absolute humiliation to the United States. Somebody's going to start standing up on that issue. But if the Iranians do something, you could have something happen in the Middle East with ISIS. You can have the economic situation. We are, teetering on something here. The European economy, the American, it turns out that we got into a recession technically, or something happened. The American people don't think the economy is going well, despite what they're being told by all of these, that they suspect are phony numbers, and what Bill Maher is telling them, how blasted off they are. They know they're not well off. There are all kinds of things. We could have another domestic violence situation. We could have violence in the political. I don't know. There's at work a lot of things happening, and those real events do intrude, and they can reshape the election. But the fundamentals of what's going on this year, which the political class and the parties, the hierarchy of the Democratic Party, which has rigged its system for Hillary Clinton. And by the way, she could be indicted. She should be indicted. I mean, how she gets out of this, I don't know. She has lied about everything on this. Not just the emails, but that they're into the deals that were being done where State Department was approving contracts while money was being given to the Clinton Foundation. I mean, that whole thing is a wreck. It should fall under RICO, what was going on with the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
And so that goes, there are a lot of, if she goes, then what happens? Democrats going to nominate, try to insist on with their superdelegates, whatever, stopping Bernie Sanders, who has run and won real votes, and has won, in fact, races that he's been cheated out of, like in Iowa, for one. Or are they going to insist on trying to shoehorn Joe Biden into this? A candidate, you want to see 1968 on steroids. Try how the Sanders people will react if the Democratic Party attempts to nominate someone in place of Hillary who did not run in the primaries. Okay?
And now, do you think that they're going to hold back, if that indictment is forthcoming, which you and I both agree it should be, do you think that the Obama administration will step in and try to hold that back until after Hillary has been nominated?
Oh, my God.
It easier?
Well, make it easier, make it more of a disaster. I mean, what do they want to do? Have her taken off the ballot after she's nominated? That would be good. No, I think that the question is whether they will do what they have done under the Holder Justice Department, whether Lynch and these people, whether she is just, as I have said, nothing better than our previous attorney, Mr. Holder, except that she's a woman. Hell, all this talk this week. Look at this. All this talk this week about a Supreme Court, whether they're going to hear this guy or not, or have to hear. You would think this issue must be just driving the American people, right? I bet you so far down their list of concerns, and mainly they say, oh, look, 60% of the people want hearings and whatever, and a vote. Well, 62% believe, according to the Wall Street Journal, that the Democrats would be doing the exact same thing if the shoe were on the other foot. Voters aren't stupid. They know these people are playing party politics at all heights. That is hardly a major. They get so much more attention to that. And I just realized, look how much attention they've given that, as opposed to her lying in the recent stuff that's come out about her emails.
Well, sure. I mean, it kind of goes to the Obama administration's stray voltage theory. Just cast everybody's attention somewhere else to distract from the main issue.
Distraction strategy. Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain. They are, and if they sit on this and it comes out, because the FBI will, the leaks, everything will come out. And if they suppress what they recommended, that she'd go before a grand jury or there be charges made, and they don't, it'll be a Saturday Night Live massacre, in which situation, which is a country watching the entire legal process be corrupted in the name of politics. And look, this is, and she will be severely damaged. So all of these things can happen. Some of them are bound to happen, and I think that everybody is whistling past the grave, because fundamentally the mainstream media, which remember is nothing but outriders for the Democratic Party, and if Trump has already started, but I wish he would make his charges more specific, not that you're just scum, but to explain how they lie to the American people and how they work to protect power in Washington and the corruption. I've got polling numbers that prove the American people think that. What we need is a campaign of more specifics, for one thing. But I mean, if I were Trump, I'd start embellishing my talks with, it's getting tiresome now, with real examples of how the system works. The DA system, go back to the general, the government's own report, the Inspector General, who said hundreds of thousands of veterans died before they could get help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that not the greatest scandal in our history?
It's
and
up there.
Nobody gives a crap.
And the ranking Democrat on that committee was Bernie Sanders, correct?
Yeah.
And he ignored this for a long time, and now he's going to bring health care for all of us based on, he used to laud the VA model, and he didn't want to believe the information when it came out.
No, understand what this is about. It's about defending the guy. I'm sorry to use a profanity.
Go for it.
The damn, all this about protecting the damn government unions. That's why they won't fire anybody. The government unions, which are in the business of protecting incompetence. That's what this is. The Democratic Party, another interest group it will not cross. And let me say this, talking about constituents that can change, I think Donald Trump, and I think he's got real problems with Hispanics, but I think he's got real potential with black voters.
That's what I was going to ask that. Have you done polling on that? Because it seems very underreported. And I know.
Yeah, well, he's showing right now that he's getting as much as 12%. But I believe that he has a real support with let's put it this way, that many blacks, particularly young African Americans, that's his campaign, he's been totally cast as racist in economic. The failures of the Democratic Party to provide jobs, to help people. And I happen to be seeing a lot more, you start seeing African Americans at his headquarters. You see them at his rallies. And I know from some personal anecdotes in New York, they like Trump.
Sure.
And if he gets some votes from there, look, if he takes the vote of African Americans from single digits to double digits, that's a major factor.
Right.
That's swinging real votes. This is an election yet not in concrete. But that is a point, and he's got arguments there. And if he starts going in and showing how the Democrats have just, what I believe of my party, which it has just used blacks for votes, and has never done anything for the cities, never done anything because all they do is pay off black politicians. That's their game. And meanwhile, I'm outraged, as every American should be, by what is happening to the underclass in America. The Democratic underclass, they don't care what happens, they just need their votes.
Sure.
And that's, Donald Trump at least will say that.
Right. And I mean, I think Hillary missed a huge opportunity, not that I want her to do well, but this Clinton Foundation, which you and I know is a corrupt system of just how to funnel campaign contributions to her, but she could have shown up in Flint with the Clinton Foundation and trucks and trucks and trucks of water.
Yeah, well, that's not what they're in the business of.
Right.
They're in the business of pretending they do things.
Correct.
While people give them big money so they can funnel it to her. And by the way, if I were Bernie Sanders, you know what I would do?
Yeah.
I'd really shake up this election. And I think he's moving toward that. I saw it on one of the TV shows today. Very simply, I'm not going to get out of it as long as she refuses to release the transcripts, the ones that Elizabeth Warren was covering for her on. What a fraud she's turning into be. In the transcripts and say, of those Wall Street speeches, there will be no peace in the Democratic Party. That's my price.
Sure.
Well, she can't turn those speeches over.
No.
As we all know why. Let's not pretend. Well, that's, I'm waiting for him to up the stakes. They're screwing him enough. He ought to, strike back instead of being by being such a pious turn to the other cheek. They're screwing him. Let him put it to her. His voters want it.
Absolutely. And it seems kind of strange. And it makes me think that he's not serious about winning this, especially as a socialist wanting to lead a revolution. Have you ever seen a socialist revolutionary who doesn't want to fight to the death?
Yeah, exactly. At least employ the Alinsky rules against her.
Correct.
Really, that's the point here. That's the point here.
All right, one more quick question for you, and then I'll let you go. And thank you so much for spending all this time with us on your busy Sunday afternoon. But Obama's heading to Cuba.
Oh, great. Yes.
On Monday. And I'm reading stories today. I can't remember where I saw it, but that they're already rounding up the dissidents that he was supposed to meet with so they can disappear them. Now,
that's what they did after the Pope.
Right. Right.
Well, this is another one of the deals where we got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because Obama, in the end, only wants to help, let me see, communists, Muslim extremists in Iran, the Ayatollahs, the Muslim Brotherhood, and everything except our friends and the things we're supposed to stand for. He wants to go to Cuba and see this, and they are giving Cuba everything for nothing. Nothing about the dissidents. We got nothing out of this deal other than Obama trying to, make points. And the thing is, I don't care what the polls say, if they're rounding up people and they're not allowing freedom of the press and whatever, the American people won't like this deal. But, he's just providing more ammunition to a larger issue. Mm-hmm. His foreign policy is selling out American interests. That's what the American people believe. And we need more discussion about that in this election. And Hillary Clinton is both the architect and the defender of it.
Right. I mean, do you think we could have a substantive conversation about Libya and her policies there and avoid Benghazi? Nice? Because the left just doesn't seem interested in Benghazi at the least when it's brought up.
The press.
Right.
Notice how the press, always in these debates, these networks want to bring up things that Republicans don't like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But they never bring up this stuff with her.
Sure.
They never bring up Benghazi and what happened. She is lying about the families. I have firsthand knowledge about that. She couldn't even, the other day, said nobody was killed in Libya.
I know.
I mean, really? Did you see them go after her the way they've gone after Donald Trump?
No.
No. And until you start challenging and pointing out to the press, to the people, that the press are the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And that they are lying to protect her, to discredit them. Trump was close, but he's doing it with too broad a brush. You got to get in there and be specific. It's the frauds like Bob Woodward calling on the press to go after Donald Trump, while he, who knows what happened in Benghazi, has shut his mouth. I don't mean the real Bob Woodward. I mean the Bob Woodward that the Bob Woodward that he's from the. You ever seen the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers? This is the alien pod that took over Bob Woodward. Because the real Bob Woodward, I knew was my friend, would never have shut his mouth
mm-hmm.
about this stuff. They are all, and look at these editorials. Oh my God, the end of the world, Boston Globe, but particularly the Washington Post. And then David Brooks, the real, if there ever was somebody with his head planted in a certain office of the president, that conservative journalist, saying, oh, the people, those voters of Trump's, well, maybe they deserve some regard, you know. But I mean, all of this stuff is outrageous behavior on the part of what is supposed to be the people who are supposed to help inform the American people. They're in the tank. They're destroying the First Amendment's idea of why they were given an exemption from the checks and balances we have, because they were supposed to protect the people from power. They have betrayed that beyond belief. They are the enemy of the American people, and they've chosen to be the enemies of the American people. But someone should speak to that with some eloquence and not watch them run for the hills.
Well, are you enjoying this? Are you laughing at all this stuff, or
No,
are you just
I'm
going
terrified
crazy?
I'm going crazy because I know what's happened, and somebody sent me a videotape I had done, or edited something, where I predicted sort of the rise of Trump. It was, and I just got it the other day. Somebody put this together, and I'm going, holy gosh. But no, my problem is, one, there is this, no one saw this coming is not true. It was there to be seen. Oh, something would happen. But secondly, I'm scared because the American people are not going to accept being suppressed. And they are the ones, as I said before, they're driving this. Trump is an imperfect vehicle. Cruz has been, Carson to some extent. Sanders is imperfect. But they are driving this. And God forbid if you scorn the American people and tell them their democracy does not belong to them. No, I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm worried because I don't see the voices or the competence of leadership to lead the people where they will take this country to redeem it.
All right. Is there anything that we should keep an eye on this week coming up?
Well, Trump, we'll see what happens in Arizona. I don't think Utah is going to be so good for him. But if he wins Arizona, winner take all, that'll be important. And then we get to watch more of the machinations of these Washington power brokers. God, are they incompetent? God, are they funny? But really not, because they're willing to lose the country if necessary to stop Trump. Some of them feel that he's really dangerous. A lot of them are just upset because they wouldn't have power.
Right.
He might threaten their power, and they're going to try to get him to bargain. We'll see, and we'll see how the AIPAC speech goes. But if Trump can't do well there, he should be able to. If he doesn't take a ram and Kerry and Obama and the rest, and Mitch McConnell for not forcing a vote on that, denying the American people a vote on. They want to vote on the Supreme Court. How about a vote on that issue?
Right.
We should have had a vote. This is all bull crap, and maybe I'll say some of that tonight. I don't know.
That's right. Well, everybody can catch you every week, 7:30 on the Fox Business Insiders.
Fox News Channel. Fox News Channel. That's it.
Oh, Fox,
yes, the Political Insiders. Yes.
Political Insiders.
Fox, right.
And how much longer are you three going to get along acrimoniously?
Well, who knows? Maybe no one in this country will be talking to anyone before it's over. but hopefully we'll be okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us. I would love to have you back anytime you're willing to come on.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy.
Sure
Thanks,
thing, Pat.
Fingers. Thank you both.
Would you consider being Cruz's vice president?
No, I'm not going to be anybody's vice president. I'm not interested in being vice president. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm not going to be vice president. I'm not running for governor of Florida. I'm going to finish out my term in the Senate over the next 10 months. We're going to work really hard here, and we have some things we want to achieve, and then I'll be a private citizen in January.
And you're not going to rethink this and go back and file in April or May for this seat?
No, I'm not running for re-election to the Senate. As I said, I'm going to finish my term here, and then I'll be a private citizen.
And what about this idea?
Oh. Wait, now I'm wiping a tear from my eye. Okay, so Time Magazine, Tracy Connors, as a piece, and that's where that audio clip came from. I'll just read this to you. Marco Rubio said Thursday that he plans to leave the government after the term of, oh my God, I'll put my glasses on. Marco Rubio said Thursday that he plans to leave the government after the end of his Senate term and that he's not interested in being anyone's vice president. And then, of course, it goes on to quote the clip that we just heard. So obviously, you know, we've talked about this on the previous show that we were on, the Snark Factor. It's my belief that Marco Lubio,
Freudian slip,
Marco Rubio is a pathological liar. And it goes all the way back to his days when he ran for Senate in Florida. He lied to the Tea Party groups down there. He rode the Tea Party wave. He misrepresented his views on immigration and amnesty. And once he got into office, what was the first thing that he did?
Knocked on Chucky Schumer's door.
That's right. And dry humped Chucky Schumer's leg. And he's been lying about his position ever since. He lied about his position to the fine folks of Florida, and then trying to sell the Gang of Eight bill to conservative media. He lied repeatedly to Sean Hannity and Mark Levin, and trying to sell this bill. He's a liar. And now he's saying that he's not going to be anyone's vice president. He's not going to run for governor. He's running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
He's running for governor. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to come back and say, listen, there was such a groundswell of support for me to run for governor of the state of Florida. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore it, Tracy Connors. I was just minding my own business at the foam party, and somebody tapped on my shoulder and said, you need to be the next governor of Florida. And at that point, how could I say no, Tracy Connors? How could I say no? He's going to run for governor of Florida. It's going to happen.
No doubt. No, he's full of shit. And if somebody asked him to be the vice president, you think he would say no?
Please. Look, the only reason he's saying that now is because it looks like Donald Trump's going to be the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows it'll be a cold day in hell before Donald Trump asks Marco Rubio to be his vice president. So he can give that answer. If it were someone else, if it were someone that didn't call him Little Marco on a debate stage, I'm thinking he would jump at the chance to be vice president. Look at this man. Other than, you know, we've heard rumors that he doesn't want to be in the Senate anymore because it's boring. We should all be as bored as Marco Rubio and have that kind of power and influence. What a boring job. But as boring as a senator must be for Marco Rubio, being a senator, being vice president would probably be even more boring.
It's true.
I mean, the only thing you got going for you when you're vice president is knowing that you're automatically in the conversation to be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, and you get a pretty sweet house.
Yeah, there's that too.
And you get an office in the White House.
And you can be handsy with strange women without anybody calling you out on it.
Oh, very true. This is a bonus.
Poor Marco.
But he couldn't even run a campaign.
No.
Which is what Obama cited as his executive experience, if you'll recall.
Look, we had heard for 3 or 4 months now. He's Mr. Electability.
Mm-hmm.
You point to the polls 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months out of a presidential election, and he's the guy. Forget the fact that it's really stupid pointing at a poll 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months out of a presidential race and making that the determination for you as to who should be the who should be the nominee for the president of the United States. The people that know him best are the people of Florida. And refresh my memory, Tracy, but I believe 78% of people who voted in the Republican primary in Florida voted for someone other than Marco Rubio.
Did you say 78? Yeah, he got about 22%. I think you're right. Yeah.
So what does that say, Mr. Electability? The people who know you best, and that's the people of Florida, didn't want you to be the Republican nominee in a big way.
And his campaign was such amateur hour. I think it was, you sent me that Politico article, right? That came out the night that he suspended his campaign.
Yeah.
That explained their lack of strategy in the face of dealing with Trump, because their strategy was just like, oh, he's great on TV, so we'll just get a ton of free media. He'll do Fox and Friends at every opportunity that presents itself, and that's it. We'll just coast.
And again, going back to him being a liar, there's a reason why Jeb Bush's PAC had such a hard-on for Marco Rubio. And it's because Marco Rubio told Jeb Bush that he wasn't going to run for president. It wasn't his time, wasn't his turn. It was Jeb's turn. And then what did he do? Ran for president. He struggles with the truth.
Well, the Senate's boring, so
it's true.
He couldn't keep to that promise. He just couldn't handle another 6 years up there, eating dinners on K Street every other night and attending cocktail parties in his honor.
How incredibly out of touch these people are. I would love to see Marco Rubio walk up to a Walmart greeter and tell him, or just how boring it is to be a United States senator.
Right. But he's not arrogant.
No. Go and tell a UPS driver that that has the same route every single day in, day out, how boring your job is as a United States senator.
Yeah.
This is a good way to debut a new show, Tracy, by pissing off a third of our audience.
You really think we have that many Ruby Bros listening to us at this point?
I got some hate thrown toward me. They act like it was good-natured hate after Marco Rubio dropped out when we were doing the old show, The Snark Factor, where we laughed for a good 5 minutes straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on my usual rant about how Marco Rubio is a liar.
Uh-huh.
He likes to lie. He likes to wrap himself in a warm blanket of lies.
Mm-hmm.
Rubio fan wasn't impressed with that. Not happy. Pointing out that he's look, and I've heard this from people on a number of occasions. Oh, you know what? It's one issue. It's just the gang. If you can't get over that, then our movement deserves to lose. It's not just because of the Gang of Eight bill. It's because he lied about it repeatedly. He did, and not only did he lie about the bill to conservative media, he pretty much represents what is wrong with the Republican Party and what has been wrong with the Republican Party for a long time, and it's this. Telling the voter that you stand for one thing during an election season, then you get elected, and you not only completely ignore your campaign promises, you go 180 degrees and completely stab these supporters in the back. Chuck Schumer? I mean, really? You don't have to be a senator to know that if someone from your staff comes up and says, Chuck Schumer would like for you to work on him with, no.
Yeah.
You don't even let that whole sentence get out of your staffer's face. Chuck Schumer would like for us to work together on, no. Nope. No, thank you. Don't want to have anything to do with it. And what did he do? He went right along with Chuck Schumer. And this is a guy that was supposed to be a Tea Party senator. Chuck Schumer.
Are you telling me that Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and Ted Cruz didn't show up in Schumer's office the first day they were there and offer to shine his shoes? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sure they did.
Oh.
Sure they did, right?
I bet. I think Ted Cruz gave Harry Reid that exercise band.
Have we determined yet who punched Harry Reid in the face?
It was an exercise band.
Right.
But he won't tell us the make and model so that we can all avoid having a similar fate.
The make and model was Vinny. Someone from a local union in Las Vegas paid the good senator a visit.
It was the ghost of Meyer Lansky sold it to him. Oh, what a piece of shit. Well, let's talk about what's coming up this week and the things to watch out for. Of course, we have primaries on Tuesday in fun-time states that are really going to make all the difference, like Arizona and Utah for the Republicans and Democrats, and then the Democrats have a caucus in Idaho. And then there's some Democrat stuff going on Saturday, too. Who cares? Hillary's got that locked. Monday night, we're going to see all 5 candidates live in the same place, but not on the same stage at the same time. And Bernie Sanders is actually going to be there via remote. But they're doing a town hall on CNN hosted by Anderson Cooper tomorrow night because we aren't all sick of seeing these people run their mouths on television. And then my favorite story of what to look out for. You ready for this? Fingers from the Washington Post.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. Was that where it was? Yeah, Washington Post. Here comes the opposition book. Clinton and her allies prepare for Trump.
Good luck with that.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. Oh, guess who's quoted in here? One guess. Clinton Hatchet Man.
Sidney Blumenthal?
Close. David Brock.
Mm.
He's not running not only 1 but 2 pro-Clinton super PACs.
Really?
He needs to have 2 paychecks.
God, these people.
He makes so much damn money.
How many beach houses can one man have?
6 or 7.
I guess so.
But yeah, he says, so what the Republicans did was too little, too late. It was petty insults and it wasn't strategic. So Brock is coming in with some strategery, and I'm sure Blumenthal's involved too. But this is going to be when it gets fun. Because, you know, as soon as she throws a punch, he's just going to take her down.
Well, yeah, it is too little, too late. If you look at the latest polls,
Mm-hmm.
I'm over at Real Clear Politics right now. Arizona, Trump 34, Cruz 21, Kasich 13. California, Trump 31, Cruz 21, Kasich 17. New York, as you'd expect, Trump 55.
Wow.
Cruz 12, Kasich 10. Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Trump 29, Cruz 17, Kasich 13.
Wow. Yeah, it's over.
Pretty much. If you look at the current delegate count, Trump is at 678, Cruz 423, Kasich 143. Kasich, I mean,
I think Rubio still has more delegates than he does. I think he was at 160 something.
Well, I mean, you get a big win in Puerto Rico,
D.C.,
Minnesota.
Don't forget D.C., that's big.
It is big. I didn't realize at the time how big it was until Rubio fan told me how big a D.C. primary win is.
Yeah, winning, 37% of a vote that counted, 3,200 people?
There
highly representative.
More people show up at high school football games here in Indiana and voted in the Republican primary in D.C. But it was a huge win.
Huge. I wonder if they get little certificates for every state that they win. Do you think they get those?
You should have some sort of trophy.
I'm thinking like a paper with like a little gold foil seal on there.
I guess. I would hope that you would have like some sort of state-themed trophy.
Well, that would be cool. What do you get from D.C. though?
It's actually
a piece of concrete?
No, it would be a trophy that was inspired by the illegal magazine that David Gregory brought in to press.
Oh yeah, the good old days.
Yeah.
I wonder how he's doing.
Oh, I'm sure he's splendid. I know this. He's not going to run for governor in the state of Florida in 2016.
Hey, don't say that. You never know. Oh, all right. Is there anything else to watch for this week? Obama's trip to Cuba?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's really going to be paying attention to that except for, people in Florida and the mainstream media. Other than that, I just don't. Do people in middle America care that Barack Obama's going to Cuba?
No.
I don't think so.
I wonder if he's planning a coup. I mean, it's built for him already.
Yeah.
It's the image that he wants, right? And I saw some clips today of like posters that are floating around Cuba. They've taken the Hope poster and repurposed it a little bit. There's another poster of him and Castro that he's standing in for Che in it. And it's wonderful. So they can have him.
Everything at this point, I don't think he even cares what he's doing as long as he thinks it's somehow building his legacy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he really cares if a new relationship between the United States and Cuba will be fruitful, whether it will actually help the people of Cuba. It's just one more thing to pad on his resume that he could look. People can look back and say, "Oh, Clinton or Obama's legacy. It's Obamacare and improving ties with Iran and Cuba." Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. That's really something to hang your hat on right there.
Well, and your favorite website, the one that makes you scream?
Drudge.
Yeah, at the top of the page right now is a giant story about all the dissidents that have been rounded up and put in prison before Obama got there.
Of course.
And then how the police had to hold back huge demonstrations of dissidents out in the streets when Obama landed. And it says that he got snubbed by Raul at the airport. So it's looking really good. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to the first ever Enough Already podcast. Thank you to our guests, Kerry Picket, Pat Caddell, Sarah Smith, and Ashe Schow. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, listen on SoundCloud, check us out on Stitcher, like our Facebook page, visit our website, enoughalreadypodcast.com.
Our good friend Paul Croteau over at youpaulymusic.com provided a lot of the bumper music you heard today. Check out his site. It's got a lot of good stuff there. Follow me on Twitter at Fingers Malloy. Follow Tracy on Twitter at Tracy L. Connors. That's it for us this week. We'll see you next week.
No courage?
No. Yeah. Done with courage.
Ah.